Hi, this is topic 7 of COM239. So this topic covers evaluation and organisational listening, and the two are not mutually exclusive. And we'll go over that and you'll begin to see that. So we've moved to organisational public relationships now. So the next few the next topics, topic 7, 8, 9, 10, and we'll be covering the organisational perspective. So we've moved through that pyramid from intrapersonal to interpersonal to organisational relationships. And this topic particularly is setting you up for developing your strategic relationship management plan for assessment 3. So the aim of this topic and the subject is to develop strategic communication to facilitate the identification, cultivation and maintenance of relationships in a range of practice context. So I urge you all to look at this video. And it's only about a minute and a half. It's Jim McNamara, a professor from the University of Technology, Sydney. And he covers evaluation and organisational listening, just an introduction to that. And I did find another online lecture that he gave at a conference, which is, it'll roll through after this one, and it's called The Art of Listening, and it's a lecture that goes for about 3/4 of an hour. It's a very good one. So I want you to start thinking, why is evaluation important? Why would we bother to evaluate? So really we need to be able to report to management, to our leaders, the value, effectiveness and efficiency of the organisation's relationship management, so that we can change and continually adjust our strategies and tactics and actions, particularly during campaigns, and just, any communication needs evaluation. And also that reputation management is very important, and also the managing of issues in or a crisis. So particularly relevant in the current situation with coronavirus, there will be a lot of evaluation going on afterwards, both from the political, the government level, the health department level, the treasury level, from banks, etc. How they actually communicated during the crisis. Charles Sturt University has had a very intentional approach to communication, and that will be evaluated as well. And that approach has been to staff and to students and to our external stakeholders, particularly community. So I want you to think from that video too, what is it about organisational listening that isn't working? So McNamara just says Brexit and USA. He actually mentions Donald Trump. And these are symptoms of the fact that our organisations have stopped listening. So organisations, meaning also government, have stopped listening. They're not consulting they're not working with community, with citizens, etc., to actually really gauge and have them in part of the decision-making process, and to actually get feedback to find out whether they're doing okay and whether the constituents' needs are being met. Really important for you all to think of this. And I just put this little graphic up because more and more we're going to have activists and activism and advocates advocating because our governments, etc., are not listening to professional advice, and they're doing their own thing. So evaluation of organisational communication effectiveness, we'll look at that concept first. So Lattimore offers two approaches to evaluating, and there are more, okay, and you will think of more as well. But the first one is to measure the objectives. So we always have to have predefined objectives of any campaign, of any communication that we're going to undertake, or any strategy. So we have to establish those up front, not during. So evaluation has to be set up at the beginning, not all the part way through or at the end. We can't retrofit evaluation. We need to be able to know what is our evaluation strategy going to be at the beginning. So we need to have those predefined objectives. Also, having milestones along the way to actually evaluate is really important as well. And then the other area is impact analysis. So this is where communication professionals will be listening. They'll be undertaking that organisational listening. They'll be reporting back to the leaders and to management on the effectiveness of how their work has been. So as a communication professional, it's an important skill to be able to gauge the audience coverage, the response from audience, whether the campaign's had an impact, and also, another thing is whether remediation has occurred as a result of the communication campaign about the environment, etc. So these are all important aspects. We need to be listening, we need to be gauging in different ways, not just quantitative measures, but qualitative measures as well. So when I talk about given the increasing importance of participative approaches in organisations, how would we gather some of this data? For instance, how will we gather the data about campaign impact? When I talk about participative or participatory approaches, more and more we're going to be going out and consulting with our constituents, having dialogue and engagement with them, eliciting stories and storytelling, and getting them to be part of that process of actually giving feedback and evaluation and making decisions. So some of the ways you could look at that, and I particularly love Dilbert. Dilbert here is actually planning to run a town hall meeting, which I thought was interesting because our Vice-Chancellor recently ran town hall meetings for staff by Zoom, and over 1,000 staff attended, and they were very good. But there was genuine engagement there. So there were questions that were sent ahead of time, and there were questions that were allowed during the time. So genuine engagement doesn't mean you set up something like this and you have the predefined frequently asked questions. Genuine engagement means that you need to be open to feedback and open to questions and be able to answer those, or at least know who to go to find the answers. So holding stakeholder workshops using methods such as appreciative inquiry, the World Cafe, maybe informal coffee conversations, marketplaces, listening posts, focus groups. Currently in Bathurst there's a new Bathurst Master Town Plan, and Charles Sturt University is partnering with Bathurst City Council, and they're looking at finding a city campus in Bathurst for Charles Sturt University, looking at maintenance of heritage buildings, plantings, car parks, but it's a genuine engagement whereby they're actually having facilitative meetings. They send out a concept map before and brochures, and then they're actually going around and holding those facilitated conversations with community. So these approaches also facilitate, as I've said, and you've probably been getting the message, organisational listening. So we'll move on to organisational listening. So this is a strategic mode that represents the inbound dimension of corporate communications. So articulated impulses from stakeholders as well as relevant context variables are intentionally and selectively perceived, interpreted and evaluated in order to support corporate decision making. So this sounds like a whole lot of words. But in essence, what they're saying here is we need genuine dialogue and engagement with both internal and external stakeholders, so we actually get inbound information back. We actually listen and we find out what's happening so that we can inform our strategic direction, our decision making. Okay? And this has to be intentional, and it has to be selectively perceived, okay, and interpreted, and then we have to evaluate it. So it's a multi-dimensional approach, and it requires policies, systems, structures, resources, and a range of processes, technologies, and specialist skills to enable and facilitate. Facilitate's very important. Delegated, mediated, large-scale listening. So this can be on a very large scale. We have to get as many people to give us feedback to actually be part of that decision-making process. And the other point that McNamara makes very strongly is the increasing importance of online consultation and databases. And we have noticed in this current pandemic how important it is to have that online engagement, that online ability to engage with our constituents, with our publics, with our stakeholders, to actually find out more and get them into the decision-making process, and having databases available of all that information. And finally, I share with you the International Association of Participation and IAP2, and there's a chapter in Australia, and this is how public participation is perceived now. This is how we actually engage with our publics and will engage with our publics into the future. So no longer is it appropriate just to inform through fact sheets, websites, that sort of stuff. More and more we need to consult, moving to, that's when you get focus groups and you get consultation. You can hold public hearings or surveys. So you're consulting, you're getting information from your constituents, not necessarily asking them to be part of the decision-making process, but getting feedback back from them. Then we move more to the involvement, where we start to run workshops where they are more involved. And they're starting to be part of understanding and considering and providing feedback on how they want to be consulted and involved. Then the collaboration is truly the place where we all want to be as communication professionals. And that's where we start to set up some advisory committees. We actually start to look at consensus building. We start to think at how we make decisions in a participative way. And then moving much more to the empowering, where we have citizens' juries that, have autonomy and create, decisions without the organisational input, without the organisation being facilitated by the organisation, but they're given their autonomy. Now, each of these phases are important. Sometimes when you've got a campaign, all you need to do is inform. Okay? So it's a horses for courses approach. But if you really truly want to be listening to your constituents, you have to move to the consultation. And if you really want to start having them part of the decision-making process, so they feel empowered, they feel like they're working with you, and it's a collaborative approach, you have to move up that spectrum. So I thought I'd offer that to you as well. Please, if you have any questions, send me an email, post comments on the discussion forum, and I hope that you can grasp these key and important approaches. Cheers.